This is a bag of Doritos from the US, and if you knew where half of its ingredients came from, you'd never eat them ever again. Yellow 5, Yellow 6, Red 40, BHT, BHA, and not to mention the main ingredient, genetically modified corn, which is just about the train wreck you imagine it would be. Half of the chemicals and cultivation practices for these ingredients are banned outside of the US, but in America, they're literally in everything. Why? Because food companies in the US don't feed you feed them. With a little help from Uncle Sam, this is how some of the worst companies in history made it to the top of the corporate food chain by poisoning you for profit.
A new study has found that 1 in 8 of the world's population are now classed as obese. That is more than 1 billion people overall.
Food is supposed to be the thing that keeps us alive. An apple a day keeps the doctor away, but apparently the food industry didn't get the memo. Because every year, they kill more people than wars, terrorism, and traffic accidents combined. You'd think that regulatory authorities like the FDA would do something to try to ensure that the food people are consuming isn't killing them, right? So what approach do they take to regulation? In the EU and most countries outside the US, food regulation authorities require chemicals to be proven safe before they're allowed to include those chemicals in mass-produced foods. In the United States, however, instead of requiring that foods and chemicals be proven safe, they just assume that all chemicals are safe to consume and only ban things when someone has proven that they're dangerous. Innocent until proven guilty makes sense for people, but you'd have to be insane to assume that chemicals developed in a lab are safe to consume unless proven otherwise. But the government isn't insane. It's much worse than that. They just don't give a shit. This is the baby of Sue Bailey, an employee of the giant chemical company DuPont. In April of 1980, Sue was working in the C8 department of DuPont. She came into contact with fumes from the production of C8, a chemical used in guns, tanks, and atomic bombs in World War II. But it's more likely that you've heard of C8 as the rebranded Teflon, the coating used on non-stick pans that you cook your meals with every single day. 9 months after falling ill at the factory, Sue's baby was born with a birth defect that doctors said was unlike anything they've seen before. In 1998, after DuPont dumped a ton of this chemical into a water supply of a small West Virginia town, farmer Wilbur Tennant found that all of his cows were mysteriously dying in gruesome ways. Over the following decades, thousands of people from this town developed cancer and all sorts of diseases. But why was nothing done about this until so many years later? Because DuPont paid millions to form a team of its own scientists, as well as those from the West Virginia Department of Environmental Protection, to jointly determine what level of C8 was acceptable in the drinking water. Scientists can't stop you from profiting from dangerous chemicals if you own the scientist. Because of the US safe until proven dangerous approach to regulation, C8 was never properly regulated. But here's the thing, DuPont employed all the scientists that the government consulted when regulating C8. And despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary, the scientists never declared it dangerous out of fear for their jobs. And thousands of West Virginians were poisoned.
I'm shocked that this great company that is held in such high regard by cities and a nation almost, I mean, around the world maybe, that it's not a priority for them. It's not a priority to get this right, make it right.
But it's not just the kitchen appliances that are affected by this total and intentional lack of due diligence. It's the foods themselves too. If I were to ask you what the largest private company in the US is, what would you say? Maybe you'd think it was a bank or something. Maybe a company from the military-industrial complex. Nope. It's actually a giant food conglomerate. You probably gave them money today and you've never even heard of them. Their name is Cargill. And despite producing tons of the food in your fridge, the food in McDonald's, and employing over 160,000 people in 66 different countries, Cargill's customers don't even know when they're buying from them. They don't even want to be a public company because then they would have to report their actions to their shareholders, and they don't want that kind of attention. Cargill operates from the shadows, slowly killing people all around the world and making billions of dollars doing it. Here's just a few of the many crimes against humanity that Cargill has committed in the past 20 years. July 2000. Cargill kills a 3-year-old girl by feeding her E. coli after their food was contaminated with actual feces. June 2001, Cargill poisons another child with E. coli. January 2002, Cargill kills 1 and hospitalizes 17 people with salmonella.
Cargill Foods has launched one of the largest meat recalls in U.S. history. It covers 36 million pounds of ground turkey linked to a salmonella outbreak in 26 states.
August 2004, Cargill dumps 60 million gallons of toxic wastewater into a creek that feeds into Tampa Bay. September 2004, Cargill spills 65 million gallons of acid into Tampa Bay. Don't go swimming in Tampa Bay. August 2007, Cargill poisons another 46 people with E. coli. If giving people E. coli was an Olympic sport, these motherfuckers would be Michael Phelps. August 2011, a Cargill palm oil supplier bulldozes an entire Indonesian village to the ground and opens fire on villagers to acquire cheap land. September 2012, more child labor. September 2013, more land grabbing. September 2008, more shit-filled hamburgers. Oh yeah, and the whole time that this was happening, they were one of the primary culprits for deforestation in the Amazon rainforest. And the moment they started catching some heat for that, they just started deforesting the Amazon's little brother, Cerrado, instead. Heck, they even won an award for it. Put that on the shelf next to azodicarbonamide, the chemical used in the production of foam plastics like yoga mats. And Cargill calls it lunch. All of this at the hands of just one food company. I haven't even mentioned Nestle or the rest of the laundry list. So is that it then? We can just blame food conglomerates for all of this? Slap a couple of fines and regulations on them, blame capitalism and call it a day? Well, not quite. It would be nice and simple if we could just blame a bunch of greedy CEOs for the state of modern food. But unfortunately, the problem runs much deeper than that. There's a poison at the root of our society, beyond our food. It's changed the way that we interact with each other, and these shitty food companies are just symptoms of a problem at the base layer of human cooperation: money. Money is how humans cooperate with each other. It enables us to store our value over time so that we can use it at a later date. Makes sense, right? But with the ability to literally print this money, governments became able to finance their wars and other bullshit without having to directly raise taxes on their people and the businesses in their economy. And printing more money makes the existing money that citizens save, less valuable.
The government definitely prints money, and then it lends that money by selling bonds. Is that what they do? They sell bonds. Yeah, they sell bonds.
The US government hasn't been able to resist the money printer for the past 100 years. And in that time, the US dollar has lost over 90% of its value. But where does this printed money go? Lots of it goes to companies like DuPont, helping them buy out the scientists. It also goes to companies like Cargill, who spend $1.4 million a year on lobbying in Washington, which if you actually think about it, it's a pretty good bang for their buck. But with money constantly losing its value, these companies are rushed to make a lot of money quickly and spend it just as fast. Cargill made $166 billion in revenue in 2022 and $177 billion in 2023. That's a little over 7% in revenue growth. Sounds great, right? Well, in the same time frame, the US dollar lost 7.2% of its purchasing power due to inflation, which means despite growing revenue, Cargill's real rate of return was actually a negative 0.1%. And those last 2 years were actually historically good years for them. When a company's operational costs keep going up, they have to keep finding aggressive ways to bring those costs back down just to stay afloat. So they make sacrifices. For example, take a look at this original Toblerone chocolate bar from a while ago. Now, take a look at Toblerone today. Toblerone reduced the amount of chocolate in their chocolate bars to keep up with inflation and a failing monetary system. This is known as shrinkflation, where instead of raising prices, companies just reduce the size of their product to stay profitable. But that's not the only way to cut costs. You can also switch out high-quality ingredients for cheaper ingredients that are way less healthy, worse quality, or in Cargill's case, deadly. And don't worry, if your sales take a hit, your investors won't leave. The government will just inject a bunch of more money into the system and artificially inflate your share price to keep your investors happy. That way, everything looks good on paper, even though everything is getting way worse. The world shifts from making things better, stronger, and healthier to making things cheaper, faster, and shittier. Quite literally shittier in the case of Cargill's blended intestine beef patties. So how do we fix the food? To be honest, I don't know. It's complicated. But I do know this. So long as our money is a hot potato that financially burns whoever holds onto it for too long, we will always live in exactly the type of world that creates this type of depravity. A world in which not only just our largest companies, but our regulators too are incentivized to cut corners, to move money fast and without proper care. As long as we continue to punish those who save their money and reward the impatient, who prioritize constant growth at the cost of all else, even human life, our best will be suppressed and our worst will multiply. We cannot divorce the fruits of our labor from the money we use to facilitate it. Money is the soil from which human cooperation grows. If the soil is poisoned, all that it produces, including our food, will be poisoned too. Thank you for watching an episode of Wrong Think. If you have a subject you want us to cover, drop a comment below. And don't forget to get based, and I'll catch you on the next one. Finally. Sue me.